Today I'm going to be talking about the first in week 4 of the Romantic period. We've looked at a wide range of writers from this time period, and today we're going to be focusing on John Keats and specifically his poem, his ballad, La Belle Dame sans Merci. So Keats was born in London on Halloween, 1795. He was the eldest of 4 children. He had a very remarkable career that ended very tragically, very early. He was 25 when he passed away. He published only 54 poems, several slim volumes of poetry, a few magazines, but over this very short career, he really took on a lot of different poetic forms. The Spenserian romance, the Miltonic epic, the sonnet, and kind of reinvented them in his own way and infused a lot of his own qualities and characteristics into those poems. So the poem that we're going to be looking at today is one of my favorites from Keats. La Belle Dame sans Merci is a ballad first. It was part of the Romantic period movement, which was really kind of an answer or a response to the Age of Enlightenment, the neoclassical period that we talked about at the tail end of 203. Where the world had become very science-based and reason-driven and theoretical. And this was a response to that. The Romantic period was a response to that. They wanted to bring back imagination and beauty and art to this culture, this society that had become so science-driven, reason-driven. And so the things that were happening at the time, we talked about the French Revolution and the violence that was with that, and then we saw the industrialization period where everybody is kind of moving to the cities and cities are springing up and becoming more industrial, more technical. Romantic writers saw these things as the proof that science and reason were not were a failure, living life based off of that. And so, and also that human beings were suffering under those constraints and the things that were happening to them. So most of his most prolific works were written in 1819, shortly after he met the love of his life. Her name was Fanny Brawne, and he contracted tuberculosis, which was essentially a death sentence at the time. Keats's poems focus on a return to beauty, Greek mythology, fairies, idealism, natures, individualism, all themes in his work and in Romantic literature as a whole. So our ballad that we're going to look at today, La Belle Dame sans Merci, describes the short encounter between a knight and a fairy lady. The title of the poem is interesting because it doesn't belong to Keats. It's not his own invention. He adopted the title of Alain Chartier's French courtly poem, La Belle Dame sans Merci. In French, the phrase means a beautiful lady without mercy. Readers can see that variation there. He does M-E-R-C-I, mercy, merci, and mercy are 2 different terms there. Merci is also thank you. It's French for thank you. So it's interesting that he did that kind of alteration there in that's in the title. It's after the form of a lyrical ballad. So many well-known Romantic writers use this form in their written works. We've got iambic tetrameter, which means that the stress falls on 4 words per line. So the effect is that it flows like a song, smoothly and with rhythm, just much like a ballad a song is. That's why it's called a lyrical ballad. And the rhyme and the rhythm are all designed to lure the reader in, and just as the knight in our poem is lured in by the beautiful fairy woman. So Keats wrote this in an outdated form of poetry that capitalized on the simple language and the imagery to tell the story. And by utilizing the ballad form here, he's lending, the poem an air of timelessness, much like a song, lives on kind of forever. This is what that kind of brings to mind. So, ballads were used as entertainment then and now, and their length was supposed to keep readers engaged, and it was a form of oral poetry, so all those things. All right, let's take a look at this poem, La Belle Dame Sans Merci. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, alone and palely loitering? The sedge has withered from the lake, and no birds sing. Oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, so haggard and so woe-begone? The squirrel's granary is full, and the harvest done. I see a lily on thy brow with anguish moist and fever dew, and on thy cheeks a fading rose fast withereth too. I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, a faery's child. Her hair was long, her foot was light, and her eyes were wild. I made a garland for her head, and bracelets too, in fragrant zone. She looked at me as she did love, and made a sweet moan. I set her on my pacing steed, and nothing else saw all day long, for sidelong would she bend and sing a fairy's song. She found me roots of relish sweet, and honey wild, and manna dew, and sure in language strange she said, I love thee true. She took me to her elven grot, and there she wept and sighed full sore, and there I shut her wild, wild eyes with kisses four. And there she lulled me to sleep, and there I dreamed, ah, woe betide, the latest dream I ever dreamed on the cold hill's side. I saw pale kings and princes too, pale warriors, death pale were they all. They cried, La Belle Dame Sans Merci hath thee in thrall. I saw their starved lips in the gloam, with horrid warning gaped wide, and I awoke and found me here on the cold hillside. And this is why I sojourn here, alone and palely loitering, though the sedge is withered from the lake, and no birds sing. So in the first stanza, in the opening, kind of sets up the scene and the subject of the poem. The speaker comes upon this knight. He knows that he's a knight by seeing him, knight at arms, but he quickly reveals that the knight is not behaving as one might expect a knight to behave. He's all alone. He's loitering about palely. He doesn't really seem very brave and valiant as we would expect to find a knight. He's kind of wandering around aimlessly. The speaker wonders why, obviously, and so he asks. He says, oh, what can ail thee, knight at arms, so haggard and so woe begone? He also remarks about the time of year and claims that the sedge is withered from the lake and no birds sing. That means that spring is over. There's no lively singing, no springtime beauty in the atmosphere. And so he's curious, like, why is this dude wandering about? He's pale and lonely. It's cold probably outside. Might be getting close to winter time. The birds have already flown south for the winter, so there's no birds there. And so the speaker kind of finds it concerning that this knight is alone without shelter at this time of the year. The squirrel's granary is full, which means the squirrels have finished collecting all their nuts for their hibernation for the winter, and the fall harvest is over. So we're going into winter time here. And that next, we're still talking about that same stanza. So the knight literally is left all alone and with nothing there. No birds, no squirrels, no nothing. Everything has gone into hibernation for the winter. In stanza 3, he says, I see a lily on thy brow with anguish moist and fever dew, and on thy cheeks a fading rose fast withereth too. The knight looks ill. He's a little sick. He's very pale. As a lily, and his face looks moist with sweat as if he's been having a fever. So all the colors are fading from his cheek. And so the speaker is obviously very concerned about the knight's health. So in the next stanza, it's the knight answering the speaker's question. He says, I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, a fairy's child. And he goes on to describe her. So the knight is now answering the speaker. So he tells him that he met this woman and describes her. She's very beautiful. Her eyes are wild. She's like a fairy. And he falls in love with her, like kind of at first sight. He knows that she's not quite human. She's fairy's child. But it doesn't refer to her as being fully fairy. But we get the impression that she's at least half fairy. She's fairy's child. He says, I made a garland for her head and bracelets too in fragrant zone. She looked at me as she did love and made sweet moans. So he starts to kind of court her and win her affection. He makes her a garland of flowers. He makes her bracelets from flowers. He even adorns her body parts with flowers, that fragrant zone. Then he implies that he had some kind of relations with the woman. She looked at him as she did love, and that she made a sweet moan. This implies that they were intimate with one another. Okay? And stanza 6, he puts her on his steed, and they ride off. And he could have, and that's all that he paid attention to that whole day as they're riding all day long while she's singing her song. He's so absorbed in her that he sees and hears nothing else. In stanza 7, she found me roots of relish sweet and honey wild and manna dew, and in sure language strange she said, I love thee true. So it's kind of the supernatural qualities of this woman. She feeds him sweet roots, wild honey, and manna. So the roots of relish sweet kind of refer to the human qualities, but manna and wild honey are kind of symbolic of supernatural qualities. In the Jewish religion, it is told that God, for the Israelites, bread from heaven called manna, and he promised them a land flowing with milk and honey. And so the fact that this woman was able to feed him bread from heaven, and then give him the wild honey, the milk and honey, the land of milk and honey, and the roots, part human, part fairy, part supernatural there. So in stanza 8, she took me to her elfin grot, and there she wept and sighed full sore, and there I shut her wild, wild eyes with kisses for. So he continues to describe the fairy woman's qualities. He describes her cave or grotto, her elfin grot. And then he gives her some human characteristics once again when he says that she wept and sighed full sore. He doesn't explain why she cries, but he does imply that he wipes those tears away with kisses. So that kind of this relationship that they're developing here, here where in the fore part of their relationship it was more of a physical connection, and now there's an emotional connection as that knight is there to kind of wipe away her tears, and the lady understands that they can't be together, they're not going to be able to be together, and she chooses to leave him to sleep. And there she lulled me asleep, and there I dreamed, woe betide, the latest dream I ever dreamed on the cold hillside. So she's lulling the knight to sleep, which is kind of strange. And when he's asleep, he has a dream, which is kind of a nightmare. So he cries out, "Oh, woe betide," which suggests that it was, a fretful dream, a woeful dream. And this is the last dream. It says the latest dream I ever dreamt. So this is the last dream that has had. So he would ever dream this. So he doesn't explain how he knows that this is going to be the last dream he would ever have. But he seems so confident of it, we don't really question it. And suddenly we've taken a turn for the worse here. We've had something awful has taken place. She's enchanted him to sleep, and we don't know what's going to happen as a result. I'm going to stop this screencast here, and I've got just a couple more stanzas to run through, and I'll do that in the second screencast on John Keats' La Belle Dame sans Merci.